Hello there, welcome to another episode of World of Tanks with Ngani Titan. As you can see, I've purchased the M53, M55, the Tier 9 American artillery piece, self-propelled gun. The differing designations being, if I recall correctly, the Marine Corps and the Army versions of the same artillery piece. Now in the video you're watching, I don't have vents installed on the tank, although I should, and I have now actually installed vents on this tank to improve performance. However, I think this tank is, well, it has a reputation for being overpowered, and I think there's a lot to be said that it is actually a bit on the overpowered side. It's quite mobile. Now I have we call premium fuel added to increase the reverse rate and increase the overall performance of the tank in terms of mobility, but it probably doesn't need it. It is actually quite mobile. I have a reasonable amount of skills in the crew. I don't have 6th sense, but I have, because I don't normally train that in artillery, although this is a tank that could probably benefit from 6th sense, because I think given the mobility of the tank, if one had 6th sense, one would be more likely to try risky positions in order to get firing angles on enemy tanks. That the mobility of the tank, you could relocate between shots, and you could take risks with this tank that you wouldn't normally with artillery pieces. Not actual exposure, or not actually firing in the open or anything like that, although it is actually not a bad tank for shotgunning, but simply just getting into locations where you have cover, but you have a risk of being spotted if somebody just crested a ridge at the wrong point or something like that, and then you'd have to immediately relocate irrespective of what you were doing, and you would then need 6th sense to respond in that kind of situation. But again, it's not absolutely necessary. It just has that capability that a lot of other tanks just wouldn't have. The base gun is actually quite decent. It's a little bit probably on the underpowered side for Tier 9, but it's much better than the stock configuration of the FE207, for instance, which I think is completely underwhelming. And the top gun on the FE207, just statistically looking at it, is more or less similar to the stock gun on the M53-55. The base reload time is roughly around slightly over 25 seconds, and I have it down to just under 21 seconds. That's without vents. With vents I could probably even knock it down another second off it, 20 seconds, maybe just under 20 seconds, which would be a significant improvement. And I have rammer and the gun lane drive on it as well, and there's a very good traverse on the tank. Traverses quite a distance, so you can get a lot of firing opportunities without rising the bloom too much in the tank. The top gun, according to this figures that I'm just looking at, has a 1.58 rounds per minute, which is, I reckon, somewhere just north of a 37-second reload. And I could probably knock that. I mean, I'm knocking 3 or 4 seconds off the 25-second reload on the current gun. So I'll probably get this fairly close to the 31 seconds. I'd be interested to see what I get when I actually get there. I'm not quite there yet. I'm about a quarter of the way there. But considering that the top gun has considerably more alpha than the 155mm gun, I suspect that the splash damage then would be quite significant, and you will get the occasional direct hit that will just completely wipe somebody out and wipe out a tank from full. I mean, if that thing penetrates the top gun, it can wipe out most tanks, except for this super heavy tanks, completely from full health to nothing in one hit. So overall, I think this tank deserves its reputation as being a very formidable artillery piece. You have the fairly rapid reload for this tier. You have fairly hard-hitting gun, very accurate gun for the tier again. It's got a long aim time and stuff like that, but again, these can be mitigated by crew skills and by equipment. And since the tank is a closed tank, it takes in vents, and vents are a huge advantage on a tank like this, because percentile decreases, percentile improvements in crew skills make a big difference when the numbers are large. So and the numbers are always large in artillery, so these tanks benefit very much if you can anything you can fit: food, vents, crew skills. All of these things make a big difference to these tanks. I'm not altogether sure that it's more fun. I actually begin to think that high tier artillery is actually probably less fun. I think that artillery is probably the most, from the player perspective, you get the most to do between tiers sort of 5, 6, 7, 8. And after that, the reload times are getting long. A lot of the tanks are becoming more effective, and the games, I think at high tier the games cascade. The cascade effect on the game is actually much more dramatic. I've had, in my experience in recent times anyway, I seem to have had a lot more one-sided games, blowout games at high tiers, tier 9 and 10, than I'd have at lower tiers. Now, I'm personally not as good a player at higher tiers as I am at the lower tiers. I'm not as familiar with the tanks and with their weak spots and things like that, but I think that's only part of it. I think that just that the combination of a clustering of better players, high performance tanks, and the cascade effect, I think just, we've harder hitting guns that and concentrated fire and stuff like that. So once you lose a tank, once you go down a tank at high tiers, in World of Tanks generally, once you lose a tank, you can frequently get a local cascade effect. So you might have a situation where you have 4 tanks facing off 5 tanks, and somebody loses a tank, and the next thing they lose a second tank because somebody's able to get somebody in a crossfire, and the next thing they're down 3 tanks, and you get this very rapid cascade of tanks losses really quickly, like maybe under a minute you could lose 2 or 3 tanks, and it really swings the battlefield around. And I think these cascades are more dramatic at the higher tiers, and one of the effects, if you're an artillery player, is that you then get less opportunities to shoot your gun. The battle tends to move around a lot more rapidly, and your ability to focus fire. Now this tank does respond well to that sort of stuff. Some of the other tanks aren't as good. The FE207, for instance, has a noticeably slower or narrower gun arc, but it also has a slower tank traverse. So it takes more time. You might be able to, top-down view, get the camera pointing on the thing situation, but the gun will follow a couple of seconds later. And by that time, by the time the gun is zeroed in, the tank that you're looking at might be dead, because things can move that rapidly. I haven't played the tier 9 Soviet artillery, but the Su-14-1 was the tier 8 Soviet artillery, and that had huge alpha, it had huge RNG, huge very long aiming times, and very, very, very large bloom, and that thing turned like it was, really slowly. It was really slow traverse, and in many cases the battlefield again, if things were stationary, you could hit really hard, but if things were moving rapidly, you wouldn't get a shot near tanks. So I'm not sure about the effectiveness. I'll have to play more, obviously, and the more I play them, I might change my mind later on, but my impression is that I've gotten 2 high tier artilleries roughly around the same time, and I'm just not impressed with high tier artillery play. I think it lacks you lack the feel of impact that you would get, I think, with lower tier artillery, that you're making an impact and a contribution to your team. You can see here now, I'm moving the gun around, but the bloom is hardly changing. I had practically 0 wait time. Now, there was a bit of RNG there, and the shell fell short. It actually fell short compared to my aiming point to wipe out the turtles like that. But at the same time, the bloom on the gun practically didn't change, even though I moved the gun around a whole city block. Just looking at my service record, I have 6 battles in the FE3 out of 5 the British tier 9 artillery, and I have no actual impression of it at all right now mentally. I'll have to go back and review the video footage to see what I think of it. So obviously, in comparison to it, it's a non-entity in comparison to the M53, M55, which definitely has made an impression on me as quite an effective piece of artillery. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and share. If you've not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you all again soon. Bye for now.